University campuses are a lot like the movie industry. People are passionate about what they do, but these are fiercely competitive environments. There's rivalry, there's gossip, there's plenty of big egos. And just like in Hollywood, in academia, only a few people will rise through the ranks to become the stars. Of course, there are differences. If you make it in Hollywood, you earn $5 million per movie, you retire to your glass house in Malibu. If you make it in academia, it's because like 10 people cite an article that you wrote once. When you retire, you get to keep your email address and your library card. But behind the scenes, there are similarities. The aspiring academic, just like the aspiring Bradley Coopers and Jennifer Lawrences, is often holding down a number of jobs while they're waiting for that lucky break into the system. The academic equivalent of waitressing on Hollywood Boulevard is doing your research, doing some teaching, and often doing some other hourly paid jobs as well. And this was a situation I found myself in a number of years ago. I was finalising my PhD in philosophy when one morning this golden goose of an email arrived in my inbox. And the gist of it went something like this. Do you want to work for as little as 1 hour per week? Yeah. Do you want to be your own boss? Absolutely. Do you want to have a captive audience? Why not? Do you want to teach philosophy? Yeah. To teenagers? I'll give it a go. This was a scheme run by the Royal Institute of Philosophy, and the idea behind it was for postgraduates in philosophy to go into local secondary schools and to introduce the subject to the kids for the first time. And today, I want to share with you my experiences of bringing philosophy out of the ivory tower. Because what started off as a way to make some extra cash, first of all turned me into an enthusiast for the importance of philosophy in schools, and then into an advocate for the importance of philosophy at every level of education. Today, I see philosophy as a right. But before I say more, we need to talk about philosophy's image problem. And when we think of philosophy, we may think of stuffy old men with the elbow patches. Maybe they're pontificating about Plato over a glass of sherry or something. We might even imagine, they can't tie their shoelaces. They're not quite socially functioning beings, We may think that if any subject deserves to confine itself to the ivory tower, it's philosophy. And if any academics ought to be impounded there night and day, it's surely philosophers. Philosophy, we may think, is an irrelevance, an indulgence, even an embarrassment. But philosophy is not just Cosa Nostra. It's not just our thing. It's not just for philosophers, university appointed or otherwise. Philosophy is for everyone. So what is philosophy? Well, philosophy means love of wisdom. And philosophers inquire into those big, juicy questions that every one of us has thought to ask at some time or another. Examples. What makes an action right or wrong? Do we have free will? What counts as a standard of evidence in medicine? What makes a field of inquiry a science as opposed to a non-science or even pseudoscience? Is there such a thing as a just war? Is abortion murder? Ask yourself, are questions like those unnecessary or an indulgence? Don't the answers that we give to those kinds of questions help to make us who we are? The philosopher Wilfrid Sellars said, "The aim of philosophy is to see how things in the broadest possible sense of the term hang together in the broadest possible sense of the term." And to go back to the movie analogy, philosophy is a lot like taking a zoom lens to the world. So when we reduce the pixel size, we're asking very specific questions about a domain of inquiry. But the aim is also to zoom back out to see how what we know fits together with the rest of what we know. So philosophy is less a body of knowledge and more like an approach to knowledge, an attitude to knowledge. It's not merely a history of ideas. It's not about deference to dead thinkers turned adjectives. Rather, philosophy asks, what do we know? And how do we know it? So what did I observe in the schools? Well, two things. First of all, asking questions as a mode of inquiry was something that was very new for the students. Unlike many of their other school subjects, the answers couldn't be located at the back of the book, and nor could they look to me or to their teacher for the right answer. And that's not to say that there's no such thing as the right answer in philosophy, because philosophy isn't anything goes. It's not some sort of exercise in Freudian free association, but rather the progress, much of the progress in philosophy is about gaining clarity over the question that we want to have answered. For example, one pupil who wanted to study physics at university confessed in class, he wondered, are all of the laws of physics discovered, or are they partially, are they in some sense man-made? And it was through doing a bit of philosophy that he had the confidence to articulate this worry. He was learning to listen to his inner philosophical voice. The second observation was more an observation of the teachers who sat in my classes. And I taught in 8 different secondary schools, so there was quite a lot to observe. And the teachers believed that it was often the more academically gifted students who were more reticent about contributing in the early classes. Also, girls were much shyer about speaking out as well. And perhaps they were nervous about being perceived to be wrong or to say the wrong thing. Alarm bells still sound in my ear from the very first day at a new school. And I was greeted by the principal, and she said, "Charlotte, we are delighted to have you in our school. Our children excel in examinations, but they're not used to thinking for themselves." Observations like these are not new. In the 1960s, a chair of philosophy at Columbia University, a guy called Matthew Lipman, was deeply disappointed with the passivity of the students that he taught. And Lipman believed that formal education acted to inhibit students' natural philosophical acumen. Lipman's solution was to devise a form of pedagogy called philosophy for children. And the idea behind this pedagogy is to hold philosophical inquiries in the classroom for kids as young as 3 to 4 years of age, right the way up in age groups. And a growing body of evidence is demonstrating the effectiveness of doing philosophy with children. In July this year, philosophy made the headlines. It was in The Guardian, the Irish Times, made the Daily Mail, stealing valuable column inches from the Kardashians, Sky News, Mid-Atlantic, drive time shows, you name it. Do you want to know why? Because of a major study conducted by Durham University. And this study involved some 3,000 9 to 10-year-old pupils drawn from across 48 schools in England. And the psychologists involved got the kids to do just one philosophical inquiry in the classroom per week for the whole school year. And at the end of the year, they discovered something fascinating. The kids' maths and their reading had advanced by an additional 2 months. The gains were even greater for children on free school dinners, so kids from socially deprived backgrounds. Here the gains were the equivalent of 4 months for their reading and 3 months for their maths. And that wasn't all. The reports were that the kids were contributing more in class, they were more engaged, and there were increases in their self-esteem and their confidence. It's worth pointing out that those outcomes weren't achieved with expensive new IT suites or flashy new school buildings. The cost per child was as cheap as chips. It was £16 or €20 per child for the whole school year. And that's a cost that would diminish year on year because it was largely an investment in training a teacher in the pedagogy. But you know, philosophy is not just a means to an end. It's not just about improving kids' test scores in their maths and in their reading. Philosophy is every bit as important as numeracy and literacy. In fact, it's integral to both, because philosophy asks, what are we using these numbers for? And how should we analyse this text that we're reading? Here we are in University College Dublin, and UCD was founded on the educational principles of John Henry Newman. And Newman is perhaps best known for writing the most famous treatise on the purpose of a university education, entitled On the Idea of a University. It's still very widely cited today. And on the very first day that UCD opened its doors, back in 1854, at his inaugural address to the students, because Newman was the first provost of the university as well, he asked them, what are we here for? His reply was, we're here to think and to reason and to compare and to discriminate and to analyse. For Newman, open intellectual discussion was the cornerstone of a university education. But philosophy is not just for the privileged few who make it to university. We don't think of numeracy as the sole privilege of mathematics professors. And we don't tend to think that literacy is reserved only for Shakespeare, Seamus Heaney, and their undergraduate and graduate acolytes. Philosophy is not just for the academic stars or the wannabe stars. Philosophy is for everyone. Here in Ireland, there's been a small but growing movement to bring philosophy out of the ivory tower and into the marketplace. For the last decade, it has been supported by teachers, educationalists, philosophers, journalists, and latterly policymakers. It's a movement that's been championed at the highest level by the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins. We're on the cusp, I hope, of introducing philosophy in our schools for the very first time. And I'm proud to say I'm part of a new organisation called Philosophy Ireland, which aims to support the teaching of philosophy in our schools and in our communities. Perhaps the timing is right. Here we are approaching the centenary of a major turning point in this country's history. Its independence. It would be propitious if things could change utterly for our attitude to philosophy, our attitude to fostering independent thinking. I'd like to share with you my Oscar-winning moment as a teacher of philosophy in schools. And it actually happened when I was packing up my stuff to leave, when I overheard this exasperated teenager. And she said, as much to herself as to anybody who was listening, she said, "My head always hurts at the end of these classes. I never know what to believe anymore." Philosophy is for everyone. Philosophy teaches children to perceive and to tolerate the grey rainbow of ambiguity. What better training for the world beyond the classroom? Thanks.